Emergency Council Session 47B is now in session, announced High Councillor Zara Vex, her crystalline form catching the light from the 7 suns visible through the Council Chamber's transparent dome. Would Admiral Kex Brightscale please approach the central podium? Admiral Brightscale suppressed a groan as he rose from his seat, his scaled hide shifting from deep blue to an anxious green. The other council members, representing 247 species from across the Galactic Alliance, turned all their various sensory organs toward him. Some of them were already starting to chitter and buzz with barely contained amusement. They knew exactly why this session had been called. "Honourable Council," Brightscale began, his voice translator working overtime to keep the stress clicks out of his speech. 3 solar cycles ago, at precisely 0300 Galactic Standard Time, the phrase that we all dread most in the universe was once again uttered by a human. A collective gasp rippled through the chamber. Several methane-breathing delegates released worried bubbles that floated toward the ceiling. "Please state the phrase for the record," Councillor Vex said, though everyone already knew what was coming. Brightscale's scales shifted to an even more sickly shade of green. The human engineer, one Morgan Rodriguez, stationed aboard the Proxima Beta research station, looked at a malfunctioning quantum stabilizer and said, and I quote, "This will be fun." The chamber erupted into chaos. A Zentaran representative fainted, their anti-gravity modules failing as they slumped in their hover chair. The hive mind of Beta Reticuli began stress-shedding spores. 3 different species simultaneously began their species-specific panic rituals. "Order! Order in the Council!" Councillor Vex's voice boomed through the chamber, her crystalline form vibrating at a frequency that demanded attention. "Admiral Brightscale, please continue with the incident report." Within exactly 4.3 minutes of uttering those cursed words, Brightscale continued, pulling up a holographic display, Engineer Rodriguez had... Well, there's no easy way to say this. They had somehow converted the quantum stabilizer into what they called a really awesome space trampoline. The display showed security footage of Rodriguez bouncing through the station's corridors, breaking several laws of physics, while trailing a stream of quantum particles that temporarily transformed everything they touched into various Earth breakfast cereals. The resulting cascade of quantum serial reactions affected 3 star systems, Brightscale said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "We're still finding pockets of space where normal matter spontaneously transforms into something called frosted flakes." "And the humans' response to this incident?" someone called from the back of the chamber. Brightscale's scales turned almost white. Engineer Rodriguez filled out the incident report with just 2 words. Worth it. The chamber descended into chaos once again. As Councillor Vex called for order, Brightscale couldn't help but notice that the human ambassador in the corner was trying very hard not to smile. This, he thought, was exactly why they needed new protocols, because somehow, impossibly, the humans kept making these incidents even more fun. And that word alone was enough to make his scales shift to panic purple. The security footage from Proxima Beta Research Station played on loop before the Council, showing the exact moment everything went sideways. Literally sideways, as gravity had decided to take a lunch break during the incident. "Computer timestamp 0300 GST, Admiral Brightscale commanded, his scales now flickering between anxiety green and resignation grey. The hologram zoomed in on Morgan Rodriguez, their maintenance uniform decorated with what humans called smiley face stickers and a badge that read, "If you can't fix it with duct tape, you're not using enough duct tape." "Chief Engineer's log," Rodriguez announced to their personal recorder, spinning a quantum wrench between their fingers like a drumstick. "The quantum stabilizer is making that weird humming noise again. You know, the one that sounds like a kazoo orchestra having an existential crisis." Several council members activated their Universal Translators explanation protocols for kazoo. "Look at this beauty," Rodriguez continued, patting the stabilizer's housing unit. "The quantum field is wobbling like jello at a birthday party. But you know what? Their eyes lit up with that distinctive human gleam that made every alien in the room want to hide under their anti-grav chairs. This will be fun. The footage showed Rodriguez pulling out not just standard repair tools, but also 3 rubber bands, a paperclip, something labelled Super Bouncy Ball, Extra Bouncy Edition, and what appeared to be a toaster. "Now," Brightscale narrated, his voice trembling, "pay attention to the quantum field readings in the corner of the display." The numbers started dancing, first literally as they formed a conga line across the screen, then metaphorically, as they began representing values that shouldn't exist in this dimension. "Who wants to see if I can make this baby purr like a kitten?" Rodriguez asked no one in particular, and then proceeded to do something with the rubber bands that violated at least 7 laws of physics and 2 laws of thermodynamics. The quantum stabilizer started humming. Not the earlier kazoo crisis sound, but something closer to what humans called disco. Then it started bouncing. Then the bouncing started creating ripples in space-time. "Ooh, springy!" Rodriguez exclaimed, and before anyone could activate emergency protocols, they had hopped onto the now highly energized device. The resulting video looked like someone had given a sugar-rush toddler control of reality's remote control. Rodriguez bounced not just through the station, but through several dimensional barriers. Each bounce left behind a trail of quantum particles that, due to some impossible interaction with the rubber bands and toaster, started transforming matter. "The serial situation," Brightscale said gravely, "was just the beginning." The footage shifted to show the cascading effects across nearby systems. The gas giant in Beta Proxima 4 turned into what humans called bubblegum. 3 asteroid fields merged into a giant cosmic game of ping-pong. A small moon started playing something humans called disco music on repeat. At exactly 0307 GST, Brightscale continued, Engineer Rodriguez managed to bounce through a previously undiscovered spatial fold, creating what they later termed the most epic shortcut ever between 3 star systems. The resulting spatial distortion turned all quantum communications in the affected areas into what humans call memes. The Council watched in horror as serious diplomatic transmissions were replaced with something called Doge and Rick Rolls. When finally caught by the station's safety systems, Brightscale concluded, pulling up the incident report, Engineer Rodriguez submitted this official statement. The hologram showed a single form with 2 words. Worth it. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the addendum Rodriguez had filed 3 hours later. Hey, I bet we could make this even more fun with a few modifications. The footage ended with Rodriguez winking at the camera while their quantum bounce trail turned another sector of space into breakfast food. And that, Honourable Council, Brightscale said, his scales now a complex pattern of terror stripes, is why we need new protocols. Because somewhere out there, right now, another human is looking at something dangerous and thinking those exact same words. In the back of the chamber, the human ambassador was now openly grinning and taking notes. So, for those council members who haven't been tracking human incidents, Admiral Brightscale continued, pulling up a new holographic display, let me remind you why these 3 words have been classified as a Class 7 galactic emergency trigger. The display showed a timeline stretching back to humanity's first contact with the Galactic Alliance. Each fun incident was marked with a pulsing red dot. The timeline looked like a Christmas light display having a seizure. First recorded incident, Lunar Base, year 2157. Brightscale began, his scales rippling with remembered terror. Human technician Blake Thompson looked at the gravity generators and said those fatal words. 6 hours later, the entire lunar colony was hosting what they called low-gravity parkour championships. 372 sprained ankles and 1 very confused artificial gravity system later, we learned our first lesson about human definitions of fun. The council members shuddered collectively. The hive mind of Beta Reticuli started humming a nervous tune. But nothing, Brightscale's voice dropped to a whisper. Nothing compared to the noodle incident. The chamber went silent. Even the perpetually bubbling methane breathers stopped bubbling. Proxima Centauri Trading Station, year 2184. Chef Amanda Chen decided that regular space station food was, quote, boring. After declaring that making zero-gravity noodles will be fun, she proceeded to create what she called the galaxy's biggest ramen bowl, using the station's water reclamation system. The hologram showed the trading station transformed into what looked like a giant soup bowl, complete with floating vegetables and protein cubes. Hundreds of humans were swimming through the broth, using chopsticks as paddles. The noodles gained sentience, Brightscale said flatly. They're now a level 3 civilization in the Crab Nebula, and they still send Chef Chen birthday cards. Several council members began stress molting. Then there was the great pet exchange of 2198, Brightscale continued, his scales shifting to a particularly nauseated shade of green. Human ambassador Lisa Park thought it would be, and I quote, super fun to introduce Earth pets to alien species. Need I remind the Council about the incident with the hamster who became Supreme Leader of the Rigel system? Supreme Leader Whiskers was a fair ruler, someone mumbled from the back. The hamster established democracy in 3-star systems by running in his exercise ball, Brightscale's voice cracked. That's not how interstellar politics is supposed to work. The timeline continued scrolling, showing incident after incident. The break-dancing diplomatic crisis of 2205. The galaxy-wide human food cooking competition that accidentally created a new form of FTL travel. The infamous Let's Teach Aliens Earth Sports initiative that ended with 7 planets joining a soccer league. But why? Asked a newly appointed council member, their tentacles twisting in confusion. Why do these words hold such power when humans speak them? Brightscale's scales settled into a resigned grey. Because, young one, when a human says something will be fun, they're not predicting the future. They're challenging it. It's like they're looking at the universe and saying, hold my beverage of choice. The hologram showed a compilation of pre-incident human expressions. Each one had that same gleam in their eyes, that same curve of the lips that xenobiologists had termed the about-to-do-something amazing, terrible smile. Every species has its own definition of fun, Brightscale explained. The Zentarans enjoy cataloguing radiation particles. The hive mind of beta reticuli finds mathematical proofs entertaining. Even my species considers color coordination meetings to be a wild time. He paused, letting his scales ripple through a rainbow of worried colors. But humans see fun as an extreme sport. They treat the laws of physics like guidelines. They look at the impossible and treat it like a personal challenge. And worst of all, his voice dropped to a terrified whisper, they're incredibly good at making their impossible ideas work. Technically. The timeline display froze on Morgan Rodriguez's grinning face, caught mid-bounce through the quantum serial incident. That's why these words terrify us, Brightscale concluded. Because when a human says something will be fun, they're not just making a statement. They're declaring war on probability itself. And somehow, against all logic, they keep winning. In the corner, the human ambassador was now taking even more detailed notes, occasionally muttering, brilliant, and why didn't I think of that? The Committee for Human Fun Prevention has developed new emergency protocols, announced Admiral Brightscale, trying to ignore the human ambassador, who was now doodling what appeared to be rocket-powered roller skates in their notes. The holographic display shifted to show a conference room where various alien species had gathered around a table labeled Operation No More Fun Allowed. Several were wearing protective gear, including anti-surprise helmets and probability shields. Our first committee meeting lasted 47 seconds, Brightscale reported. That's how long it took for someone to suggest we simply ban the word fun. Representative Blocks of the Silicon Consciousness is still recovering from the logical paradox that followed when we tried to explain to their AI why that wouldn't work. The display showed the poor silicon-based being sparking and displaying the error message, Error 404, Human Logic Not Found. Our second attempt involved creating a predictive algorithm, Brightscale continued. We fed every recorded human fun incident into our most advanced quantum computers. The computers came back with a single response. Good luck with that, followed by what humans call an emoji of something crying with laughter. Several council members nervously checked their own computers for signs of developing a sense of humor. The breakthrough came when Dr. Pip Luminox suggested we stop trying to prevent human fun and instead focus on containing it. We developed a 3-phase response system. The hologram displayed a complex flowchart that looked like a crash test between a subway map and a pretzel. Phase 1, the fun detection system. We've programmed our sensors to detect the specific brainwave patterns humans emit right before they're about to do something catastrophically entertaining. We call it the hold my beer wavelength. The simulation showed a test run where the system successfully identified a human about to teach a maintenance bot to breakdance. Unfortunately, the warning system's flashing lights and sirens only made the human say, "Ooh, disco lighting, even better." Phase 2, the containment protocol, Brightscale continued, his scales flickering between hope yellow and despair grey. Once fun is detected, specialized containment fields activate to, theoretically, limit the scope of human creativity. The next simulation showed a human confined in a containment field with nothing but a paperclip and a rubber band. Within 3 minutes, they had somehow constructed a miniature particle accelerator and was using it to make toast. The containment field test failed because we forgot humans consider barriers as, quote, fun challenges. Brightscale's scales turned embarrassment purple. We had to scrap 17 different containment designs after test subjects turned them into musical instruments, carnival rides, and in one particularly creative case, a coffee maker that also does taxes. Several council members nodded sympathetically. They'd all tried to human-proof their technology. They'd all failed. Phase 3, Brightscale said, pulling up the final simulation, the redirection initiative. If we can't stop humans from having fun, we try to point them toward less reality-breaking activities. The display showed various attempts to distract humans with approved entertainment options. Each attempt ended with the humans somehow combining the safe activities with whatever they weren't supposed to be doing in the first place. We offered them puzzle games, Brightscale said, rubbing his head scales wearily. They used the solutions to reprogram our defense systems to play something called Pong. We tried art therapy. They turned 3 asteroid belts into connect the dots. We even tried introducing them to Zentaran radiation particle cataloging. What happened with the cataloging? Asked a nervous council member. They turned it into a party game, with prizes. The Zentarans are still recovering from learning that science can be, as the humans say, a blast. The final simulation showed the complete protocol in action: detection, containment, and redirection. In the simulation, it worked perfectly. In actual testing, well. Our last test subject looked at all our safety measures, said challenge accepted, and proceeded to turn the entire testing facility into what they called the galaxy's biggest pinball machine, Brightscale admitted. We're still finding test engineers bouncing off the walls. Some of them are actually enjoying it now. The hologram faded, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. But, Brightscale added, his scales showing a glimmer of determined orange, we have to try something, because right now, somewhere out there, a human is looking at something dangerous and thinking those 3 terrible words. Right on cue, the human ambassador's voice drifted from the back. Hey, you know what would be fun? Every alarm in the council chamber went off at once. Implementation day arrived with all the grace of a plasma core hiccup, Admiral Brightscale reported, his scales now cycling through colors faster than a malfunctioning disco ball. We chose Space Station Omega-7 for our first real-world test, mainly because it was already equipped with 17 different types of emergency containment systems. We would need all of them, and more. The holographic display showed Space Station Omega-7, a massive structure that looked like a sophisticated snowflake made of metal and glass. Warning lights were already flashing. 0900 GST. The fun detection system registered its first alert. Human mechanical engineer Tony Parker was observed looking at the station's waste recycling system with what our experts classified as a dangerously thoughtful expression. The footage showed Parker tapping a wrench against their chin, saying those dreaded words, "You know, with a few modifications, this whole system could be way more fun." The response was immediate, Brightscale continued. Containment fields activated, redirection specialists deployed. Everything was going according to protocol until... The display split into multiple feeds, each showing a different part of the station. We forgot about human networking capabilities. Engineer Parker had already shared their idea in something called a group chat. By the time we contained Parker, 7 other humans had already thought the idea was, quote, totally awesome. The footage showed the chaos unfolding in real time. The containment field around Parker only served to give them a quiet space to draw up detailed plans. The redirection specialists' attempt to interest them in safe activities was met with enthusiastic suggestions about how to combine particle physics with mini-golf. 0915 GST, the situation escalated. Human Medical Officer Sandra Chen saw the containment field and said, the hologram caught Chen's fateful words. Bet I could turn that force field into a slip and slide. 0920 GST, Security Officer Marcus Wong, discovered that the emergency protocol warning lights could be synchronized to something called the Macarena. The footage showed entire sections of the station pulsing in rhythm while humans danced through the corridors. 0925 GST, the redirection initiative suffered a critical failure when Communications Officer Tyler Jackson convinced our specialists that their own jobs would be, quote, much more fun with some sparkly additions. The display showed the redirection team, now covered in glitter, helping humans modify the station's communication arrays to broadcast something called space karaoke across 3 sectors. 0930 GST. We lost control of the situation entirely when Chief Science Officer Rebecca Singh looked at all our carefully designed protocols and said the words that still haunt my dreams. Hey everyone, what if we combined all these awesome ideas? The resulting footage looked like someone had put a party, a science fair, and a circus in a blender. The waste recycling system had been transformed into what humans called a super soaker that shot streams of purified water through the containment fields, which Chen had indeed turned into zero-gravity water slides. The emergency lights were now providing a light show for the station-wide karaoke competition, while Parker's modifications had somehow turned the entire waste management system into what they called the galaxy's most epic water park. The worst part, Brightscale said, his scales settling into a defeated beige, was that everything still worked. Better than before, actually. The station's efficiency improved by 47%. The water recycling system now produces water so pure it makes other water feel inadequate, and the containment fields, they're now part of something humans call the most extreme sport in the galaxy. The final footage showed the station's current state, a fully functional facility that somehow doubled as an entertainment complex. Humans were using the containment fields as bounce paths between workstations. The emergency protocols had been integrated into what they called the fungiest safety system ever. In conclusion, Brightscale said, watching as the footage showed a conga line of humans and converted redirection specialists dancing past a sign that read, Safety third, fun first, snack second. The protocols didn't fail exactly, they just got repurposed. He paused, looking at his notes. Though I do have to admit, the water slides are quite... No, this is exactly how it starts. This is how they get you. But even as he spoke, his scales betrayed him by flickering briefly to what xenobiologists had recently termed having a blast blue. But here's the truly terrifying part, Admiral Brightscale announced, his scales shifting to revelation gold. After analyzing 6 months of data from Space Station Omega-7, we discovered something that no one, not even the humans, expected. The holographic display showed a series of graphs and charts that looked suspiciously like happy faces. The protocols worked, just not in the way we intended. Brightscale's voice carried a mix of awe and horror. By giving humans designated areas to be fun, they actually started containing themselves? The council chamber erupted in disbelieving murmurs. "Watch this footage," Brightscale continued, pulling up a new recording. "This is human engineer Joey Martinez discovering a malfunction in the station's quantum core." The video showed Martinez examining the core, getting that familiar gleam in their eyes, then stopping. They pulled out their personal device, checked something called the fun schedule, and said, "Better wait until my turn in the experimental physics recreation zone. That's way better equipped for quantum shenanigans." Several council members fainted from shock. "They created a booking system," Brightscale explained, his scales now showing bands of confused cyan. "They're taking turns. They're filling out safety forms. They're being responsible about being irresponsible." The display showed more examples. Humans checking the weekly fun roster before starting experiments, scheduling their reality-bending activities in advance, even filing intended shenanigans reports. "We didn't stop them from having fun," Brightscale said, realization dawning in his voice. "We accidentally gave them a framework to have more fun, more efficiently. They're now achieving levels of controlled chaos that shouldn't be possible." The final piece of footage showed the station's current fun management board, complete with safety guidelines, sign-up sheets, and a leaderboard for what they called most epic but still within regulated parameters achievements. The humans have turned following our protocols into Brightscale's scales rippled with disbelief. Into a game. They're competing to see who can have the most fun while technically following all the rules. He looked up at the council, his expression haunted. "Do you realize what this means? Every regulation we add just becomes another creative challenge. Every constraint becomes a new category in their competition. They're not just adapting to our protocols, they're gamifying them." The human ambassador in the back was now practically vibrating with excitement. "And the worst part?" Brightscale's voice dropped to a whisper. "They're teaching other species how to join in. Just yesterday, I received a request from the Zentaran High Command asking if they could install what humans call a slip and slide in their central data processing facility. They said it would make quantum calculations more fun." His scales settled into a pattern that xenobiologists would later classify as accepting the inevitable. "We didn't create protocols to contain human fun," he concluded. "We accidentally created a manual for spreading it." From the back of the chamber came the sound of the human ambassador typing rapidly on their device, followed by the words that would launch 1,000 new protocols. "Hey everyone, who wants to make filing safety reports more fun?" And so, Admiral Brightscale addressed the council, his scales now showing a complex pattern that could only be described as, if you can't beat them, join them, orange. "I propose our final policy change." The chamber had changed since the meeting began. Several council members were now wearing what humans called party hats. The methane breathers had figured out how to make their bubbles form synchronized swimming patterns. Even the hive mind of Beta Reticuli was humming what sounded suspiciously like, "Another one bites the dust." Instead of trying to prevent humans from saying, "This will be fun," Brightscale continued, trying to ignore the small conga line that had formed among the junior delegates. "We should establish the Galactic Fun Integration Protocol, or GFIP." The holographic display showed the new guidelines, decorated with what humans called emoji and sweet clip art. Every space station, research facility, and diplomatic outpost will now include designated fun zones, complete with safety guidelines that humans will actually follow because ignoring them would be less fun than working within them. Several council members nodded enthusiastically. One of them was doing what humans called the wave. "Furthermore," Brightscale said, his scales betraying a hint of excitement pink. "We'll be establishing an interspecies recreation committee, their first project, teaching Zentaran radiation particle catalogers how to combine their work with something humans call disco." The Zentaran representatives perked up their sensor arrays. "And finally," Brightscale concluded, pulling up one last document, "we're officially reclassifying the phrase, 'this will be fun,' from a Class 7 galactic emergency trigger to a Class 3 scheduled entertainment warning." He paused, looking around the chamber that had witnessed so much panic just hours before. Now it was filled with species learning human dance moves, comparing notes on awesome ideas, and generally embracing what humans called good vibes. "Meeting adjourned," announced High Counselor Vex, her crystalline form sparkling with newly installed party lights. "But before we go, I believe our human ambassador has a suggestion for making our next budget meeting more interesting." As the council members filed out, already signing up for various fun committees, Admiral Brightscale noticed his scales had settled into a new color pattern. The xenobiologists would need to create a new classification. Actually kind of looking forward to this purple. Back on Space Station Omega-7, Morgan Rodriguez looked at their latest project update, Fun Integration Protocol Test Site Alpha. They grinned, cracked their knuckles, and said those once dreaded, now anticipated words, "This is going to be fun." And for once, every monitoring system, emergency protocol, and safety officer in the galaxy responded with a new message. "Scheduled fun activities approved. Please proceed with regulated chaos." The universe would never be the same. It would be better. It would be more efficient. And most importantly, it would be a lot more fun. Even Admiral Brightscale's scales agreed, finally settling on a color that perfectly matched the smile on his face.